Hi, everyone. My name is Theresa, and I have Fridtjof with me. To just give you an introduction, and then we'll dive deeper into some content and discussions. Econos is a digital investment platform where we enable, via tokenization technology, anyone to get access to investments that are traditionally in the institutional portfolio, such as venture capital investments. And one of our VCs listed on the platform is Planetary. But please, Fridtjof, what do you do and what is Planetary? I think you can answer that best in case anybody hasn't heard.
I can try at least. Hi everyone. At Planetary, we do invest into hard and software startups. And what's a bit different about us is that we have a fully employed scientific team. So basically, we only do invest if the science team really says here, this is part of a solution when it comes to climate mitigation, waste reduction, biodiversity protection, or resource efficiency. And the science team basically has the right to veto any deal. So we only do invest if it doesn't make sense from a financial point of view, as well from a scientific point of view.
We just heard also from Tillman in this speech before that actually a couple of years back, when you think through what people thought, and especially in the investment industry, when you heard the word impact, planetary investment, at least my perspective was, or perception, that people would have labeled what you do, what we do, what most of the startups here at this conference do, as kind of the tree huggers, I want to say, right? So what has changed? Suddenly, a lot of VCs are popping up, mushrooming, that are doing climate impact. Like, what has changed within the financial industry to suddenly realize there's actually maybe a return potential?
Well, I think it's a couple of things. I mean, the obvious one is the problems we need to invest in, they won't go away. Like, the intensity of the problems we're seeing, they're just increasing and increasing. I think more people are getting this. Another part of why this is happening is also due to regulation. If you look on a European scale of stronger and stronger or tighter regulations and de-investment into fossils, but then also new regulation when it comes to plastics, for example, or a mandatory drop-in quota of synthetic aviation kerosene, the change is happening, it's underway, and it's kind of easy to see this is really happening. And I think more and more people are getting like that the constraints of how you did invest in the past are not actually applicable for the future anymore. So at Planetary, we try to combine different views. The classical VC model, where you look at the market size and like the technology and the team, that for sure. But then we also have this quantitative angle where you kind of quantify the impact. If it's really way better, we can talk about that in a bit. But also then we look at the policy landscape. It's like what regulation is underway, how the market is changing, and if you combine those three circles, if you will, and then you try to invest in the middle, where you're quite sure that this change needs to happen, and you find the company which is best to make this change happen.
So the decision then at the end of the day is quite similar to a classical VC model, right? The core difference is the quantification of the impact side. Can you dive a little bit more deeper into it? Because I think especially in climate, we're quite good at quantifying carbon, right? But we purposefully named this planetary investment because there's biodiversity, etc. Can you maybe?
Yeah, no, totally. I think I start with zooming out. So the concept we're using at Planetary is the planetary boundaries, and you might have heard it. We don't only have a climate crisis, we have the hugest loss in biodiversity, for example, since the extinction of the dinosaurs. So, and if you want to quantify that, the World Economic Forum says that roughly the half of the global GDP is connected to biosystem services of the biodiversity to us humans, right? So we do have multiple crises: land use change, water, freshwater use, all of that. And so what we do at Planetary is that we not only look at climate, we take this broader view. And then we use something that's called life cycle assessments. And that's not new. It has been around for 20 years. And life cycle assessment is basically a really holistic view on the whole life cycle of a product. So what you do is that you look at all the mass and energy balances throughout the life cycle of product. So from the extraction of the raw materials where are they extracted, how much energy do you need it, transportation, shipping, and then the manufacturing energy you need. Which kind of energy do you use for it? And that for each of the parts. And then you come to real life of the product, right? So is it a single-use product? Is it a multiple-use product? How much energy do you have to put in each time? Since to the very end, the end-of-life scenario. It sounds complicated. In fact, it is. But it got a lot of benefits if you really do it. Because if you do that for the idea of a startup and compare it to today's economy, then you can suddenly put them side by side and you can really determine if this is significantly better, yes or no. And I think it's quite obvious, since we're giving the problems, is that I think it's not about making the same decisions again. I think we need to make smarter decisions at the decision point itself, meaning science needs to have a say if this is really significantly better, yes or no. And if it's not significantly better, we just shouldn't do it because it's not leading to a world within the planetary boundaries. And so, like, what we also do is that whenever we talk about this evidence, we also publish it. So on our website, you can look it up and you can challenge it. But that's the sort of evidence which is also helping the portfolio companies a lot because they can basically walk around and say, hey, this is the difference we're making to the world.
One of the, I think, key questions in this, especially if you look at the VC and investor scene, as we said, there's suddenly so many VCs going into this space. What do you think does a VC or investor in general need within the team, within the structure, in order to also capture returns at the end of the day?
I mean, making investment decisions is basically assessing risk, right? So, and I would argue that in the future, there needs to be a correlation between how much better a company is and also the financial outlook of these companies. There must be a correlation. If this is not going to happen also throughout policy and throughout innovation, we're going to fail on the climate crisis and the other crises. So I'm quite convinced that this is happening, and it's happening in some parts we invest in where the regulation is actually leading to this pathway. And I would argue that in order to be precise with your judgment, you need to build up the in-house capacity because otherwise you're blind towards the impact of your investments. And saying that, I think you need to build up the in-house capacities in order to judge that, right? You're good in judging business decisions. If you want to judge really good on the impact of your decisions, then you need to build up this capacity as well.
So different skill set, different people within the investment team?
Yeah, I would say different skill set, but also different culture, because it can't be true that business people are overruling science people. I think you need a different kind of company investment culture where you look on eye level between science and business, because only then you start to make a different kind of decision where you, in this point in time, because like science tells us what is part of the solution and what is not, right? And I think it's about the speed of the implementation in policies or investment decisions where we need to give science a voice.
Another point, I think, hardware versus software, right? You already mentioned. Maybe you can pick an example of your current portfolio, maybe hardware?
Yeah, totally.
To give an idea for
Cool.
the audience.
So yeah, if you're taking this quantitative angle, you come to the big topics, obviously. So one company invested in, it's called C1. They, on a supercomputer, they've been able to create a new catalyst for the production of green methanol. And methanol is not only a platform chemistry you need for a lot of different processes, it's also an alternative to power container ships. And so this is super interesting since they have now a much more effective catalyst since the one which is roughly invented 100 years ago. You are able to kind of substitute a bit of the green premium of the green methanol by using the gains in efficiency. And so that brings down the price of green methanol with this method. And to give you an idea, Maersk already bought 18 container ships with hybrid engines that run on green methanol, so that the quantity is just huge. And that's the sort of thing I think we need to put innovation in and to get to scale, because otherwise we just won't make it, right? And I think it's important that we get to these topics which can have that scale.
Thank you very much. Thank you to both of you. Give them a round of applause, guys. Thank you.